Here we are looking at the Borghese Gallery. You all know that it has a new director since a couple of weeks. Francesca Cappelletti has been appointed. She's not yet, probably she will be starting. It's one of these super directors in Italy. 5 years ago, the system had been changed, and in some museums, the most important ones, like the Borghese Gallery or the Uffizi in Florence, just to quote the two most famous, the directors are not coming from the Ministry for Artistic Heritage, but through a special competition. And they are super director in the sense that they have special powers. They are totally independent from the ministry. And Francesca Cappelletti, who is an important scholar, who wrote a lot, maybe her name could ring a bell to most of us on Caravaggio. She was the one who discovered the documents on the Taking of Christ by Caravaggio in Dublin in the 90s. So she's also a good friend of mine. So I'm really happy that she won this competition. The Borghese Gallery, which of course, as you may have all guessed from my name, it's a place linked to my family, but it's owned by the Italian government since 1902. And that's how it looks now. And it's this way, basically, well, because of Scipio, Cardinal Borghese, but Scipio could do everything because of Paul V Borghese. Paul V, or Camillo Borghese at the century, was elected Pope in 1605. And I think we are all familiar with this funny system of the papacy, a little bit a monarchy by election. So it's a Russian roulette. Anyone could be elected Pope. The Borghese, for example, at the time of Paul V, were really not that noble. Marcantonio Borghese, Paul V father, moved to Rome in 1541 from Siena, from Tuscany. They were a quite important family. First traces of the Borghese go back to the 1200s, but they were not that important. I mean, some men of military conductors of arms, some landowner, but really not that noble, not that special. Marcantonio, who's a lawyer, the first one in the family to have a college degree, so not even that cultivated, moves from Siena to Rome, marries Flaminia Stalli, a noble woman, and one of the sons, Camillo, gets to be elected, as I just said, in 1605 as Pope, and he picks the name of Paul V. Here we see him portrayed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. We are in 1600 Rome. It's the century of absolute power. I'm trying to simplify a little bit the complex historical frame of the time. But I mean, when you're a Pope, you know when you start, you have no idea of when you're going to finish, when you die. At least it used to be this way until the last Pope Benedict. So it's nearly natural that you trust the people of your family. So Paul V would trust his beloved nephew, Scipio Borghese. His the son of his sister. Actually, his name would be Caffarelli, but adopted by Paul V, so he is Scipione Borghese, who will be nicknamed Delizia Urbis, the town delight. Why? Because of course he enjoyed life, but not just that. I mean, the first, let's say, official charge he got when his uncle was elected Pope, he was entrusted to organize the many events, we would say, today to celebrate the nomination, the election of Paul V. And of course, he organized many festivals, carousel, etc., etc., etc. Among them, he got all of the Roman fountains to run with wine and not water for 3 days in a row, day and night. So, of course, all Romans at every possible social level loved him and nicknamed him the town delight, the Urbis Deliciae, because he provided joy to the whole town and not just to him. I'll be speaking again about Gian Lorenzo Bernini further on, because he was kind of discovered by Scipione during the works for the embellishment of his villa. But here we see Scipione portrayed by him, and going back to the fact that it's kind of evident how much he enjoyed life, we can see here there is a button, half in, half out, giving us a bit the feeling that he just enjoyed a good meal, so the button just can't go back to his place. Back to the villa. The villa, it's immediately out from the Aurelian's walls, the ancient Roman city walls, because Scipione wanted to make things like you did in ancient Rome. So villas, country houses, are out of town. So, I mean, immediately out, it would be a very short horse ride, but it is out of town. And the model, the prototype somehow for the villa would be Agostino Chigi's villa in Via della Lungara in Trastevere today. You see how both of them are kind of open in a horseshoe, in a U shape, with a loggia at the ground floor. So there is this game of in and open spaces, and because villas were protected from the public eye by the green barrier. They were surrounded by the garden. Still today, in both cases, driving along the Tiber for the Renaissance villa of Agostino Chigi, or along the Via Pinciana for the Borghese Casino, you actually do not see the building, you just see the crowning part of it. Before I start speaking about the museum, and I just wanted to introduce to us our host, so Paul V, thanks whom everything was possible, to be totally honest. Scipione Borghese, the patron, and I also wanted to mention Mark Antony IV, who at the end of the 1700s and beginning of the 1800s had his casino. That's casa in Italian would mean house. Casino, it's the small house. That's how they considered the villa, because it's actually relatively small. And being so close to Rome, to the Rome city walls, it didn't have really guest rooms. It had only one bedroom destined to a servant, not to the owner, who in 10 minutes by coach could make it from the palazzo in town to the villa. So Marcantonio thought that his casino was beautiful, important, but really oldish. We are at the end of the 1700s. The new trends for interior decoration were coming from France. At that time, Rome wasn't anymore really the capital of visual arts, but still a very important place for the so-called Grand Tour. So Marcantonio got it totally renovated by an architect who is named Marcantonio Asprucci. So going back to the 1600 building, which was built by a Flemish architect called Van Santen, Italianized in Bazan, so he lived in Rome most of his life, who started off as a woodcutter. Somehow the building recalls Flemish furniture, but at the time, early 1600s, the outside was really kind of simple, just with the niches, with the busts of the Caesar, hosting bust of the Caesars. I mean, this Baroque and before Baroque Renaissance idea of rebirth of the classical heritage. So to make it short, we all come from ancient Rome. Let's play a little bit with the genealogical tree. And I told you the Borghese were not that noble. So let's play a little bit with the genealogical tree of the family and just let's establish, let's say, then we come from the ancient Roman Caesars. I mean, why not? The Van Santen died at the beginning of 1600s when the casino was under construction and was finished by the Italian Flaminio Bonso. At that time, I was saying the outside quite simple, but bare decoration, the bust of the Caesars, the double staircase that at some point were removed and now instead all has been restored. But the inside was white, because was white, it's a way of saying, was super simple, because according to the Cardinal Scipione Borghese and to the architect Van Santen, the interior was going to be simple, plain. The attention of the owner, the collector, and of his family's members and friends had to concentrate on the works of art they are kept, because the main function of the casino of the villa from the very beginning was the one to contain the amazing collection that the cardinal was realizing. Why? Because he loved arts, he was an amazing art patron, because he thought that culture, art collection, would have been the opening key in the Rome society, would help justify the recently acquired social status. Of course, I mean, to have a pope in the family and the pope was the king helped a lot, but nevertheless, the art collection would somehow back up the position. And so, I mean, really the place where to keep his art collection, basically statues, because the paintings were kept, most of them, in the Borghese Palazzo in town. When the Italian government bought it, again, 1902, they succeeded into buying also good part of the painting collection. And it's there, and it's here, exhibit at the same time, which is of course very, very nice for us, for the public to enjoy it. And if ever you have the opportunity to come in Rome in this period, it's as beautiful as possible, because only 80 visitors are allowed in the building every 2 hours. So it's really, you just get private visits one after the other one. It's nice. So at the time of Scipione, some decoration outside, plain the inside. late 1700s, Marcantonio Borghese and his architect Asprucci kind of do the opposite. They move away the Caesar bust from the outside. I told you they have been recently replaced there, but they enrich, they embellish the inside. Here, just an example, as much as possible. I would say that the guiding criteria in 1780s, it's horror vacui, to be afraid of empty space. Every single square centimeter bears decoration. The eye can kind of never relax. It's overwhelmed 360 degrees around. You walk into the villa, into the casino of the villa, forgive me, north or south, and you are kind of impressed by the big halls. This it's the one north, and I'm showing you this white and black picture of the beginning of the century, because you see in the middle, that's not nothing, a beautiful ancient Roman fountain. That's how it looks today. There is this magnificent statue by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, always, Rape of Persephone, that was not here in 1902. Why? Because the first time the statue came in the Borghese Casino, even though it was commissioned by Scipione Borghese, it's in 1930s, because it was commissioned to Bernini by Scipione Borghese. It's one of the so-called four Borghese groups. But when it was realized, Paul V, Uncle Pope, died. He died in 1621. The new Pope was from another important Roman family, the Ludovisi, and Scipione thought that because he had been kind of mean to some of the other Roman collection when he was backed up by his uncle, the Pope, he thought that it would have been a good idea if he gave this statue, just finished 1621 by Bernini, to the new cardinal nephew, Ludovico Ludovisi. So this statue was kept in the Villa Ludovisi, which used to be where now there is the American embassy in Rome, in Via Veneto. But of course, I know now I'm confusing you. So just so you know, when that villa was unfortunately destroyed, the Ludovisi collection was bought by the Italian government, kept in a beautiful museum in Rome called Palazzo Artemis. And in 1930s, they thought that would make sense to have this statue commissioned to Bernini for the Borghese Casino, in the Borghese Casino for the first time ever. See how rich it's the entrance hall north, and this is the other one, south. Also wanted to point out, I mean, there are amazing details. Again, all of the decoration we see on the walls, it's late 1700s. Marcantonio IV, Prince Borghese, and his architect, Marcantonio Asprucci. But for example, here these animals, it's mosaic, and here these circles or oval, maybe I could have a slightly better slide here. You see, they are realized according to some drawings provided by an artist named Tommaso Conca, and technically they are very interesting because they are close to porcelain, and we are in 1780s, so really very similar to the same results Joshua Wedgwood was reaching in UK in a totally different way, but the results following a totally different path, but the results are incredibly similar. This just to mention that the renovation of the Borghese Casino in 1780, which to make it short would be neoclassical period, it's incredibly interesting also under a technical, nearly scientific point of view. But going back to Scipione Borghese and his collection, I've mentioned he had in the casino statues, reliefs and statues, ancient Roman ones. This could be the most famous one, the Borghese Gladiator, which is not there anymore. In fact, you probably recognize the slide. It's in the Louvre Museum today since Napoleon. And why is it that what Napoleon brought to France, like, for example, I don't know, Raphael and who is today back in the Borghese Gallery, we'll see it in a moment, came back from Paris to Rome, while the Borghese Gladiator and the Borghese vases, I mean, I would say second only to the Samothrace Nike, the most important classic art pieces of the Louvre museums. Why they didn't go back to the Borghese Casino in Rome? Well, because Napoleon did not steal them. In this case, he bought them. It's a legal contract and basically nothing to do. He bought it and it's still there. Paintings, as I mentioned before, most of them were kept in the casino, in the palazzo in town, and moved in the casino only late. Most of them, but not all of them. For example, the Caravaggio were kept already in the casino, some of the Caravaggio. I choose some of the paintings of which I wanted to speak according to some iconographic themes, and maybe the one that Scipione enjoyed the most was love and beauty. So he had, for example, in his private office, let's say, these two Venuses hanging one next to the other one, just like they are hanging one next to the other one in a room at the second floor of the Borghese Casino today. They are painted more or less in the same time. We are in the very early years of the 1500s, 1510 approximately. But one, it's German, the one on the left, and the other one, it's Italian. I think you would have guessed it immediately now, because it's Marlene Dietrich and Sophia Loren. I think if we try to compare them in our minds, still today will be not that different. But it's not only because of the body volume of the two beautiful ladies, it's also, I mean, the German one, it's in open air, a tree trunk, one Cupid who is holding a honeycomb in his hands. Honey, it's one of the sweetest elements we find in nature. The Italian Venus, it's standing in a niche. Two Cupids, one is not enough. And her physical presence, it's outlined as much as possible by the shading effects. This one is by an excellent German painter, Lucas Cranach, and this is by a quite good Italian Venetian, but influenced by Michelangelo painter named Marco Basaiti, which if we forget his name in a moment, really nothing happens. But it's interesting, I mean, to have them hang one next to the other one, it really made, I imagine, Scipione, like it makes all of us, think about how standards of beauty are the result of the times in which we live, but also of the places in which we live. So different north of Europe from Mediterranean Europe. here more in detail. This is maybe the most important painting of the collection, Tiziano Vecellio, Titian, Sacred and Profane Love. But this is a much later title that a British visitor gave to the painting, probably at the beginning of the 1800s. And in the Borghese family, we always say, and we're kind of proud of how stupid we have been, because at some point, Rothschild, 1803, saw this painting, who was in the Borghese Palazzo at the time, thought that was beautiful, and offered the Borghese prince of the time 2 million liras for the painting. The Borghese prince refused, and some years after, I mean nearly 100 years after, the whole collection was bought for less of that amount of money. So maybe if they would have sold a one painting, we would have kept the gallery and the rest of the collection. But of course, it's a unicum and it's fantastic that everyone may enjoy it. Going back to the Titian painting, we now know that it's a wedding gift realized by Tiziano in Venice because of the wedding of Niccolò Aureli and Laura Bagarotto. The slide, I'm sorry, it's not good enough, but it's family arms here on this plate, and in the middle of the fountain sarcophagus here of these two families. So it's actually twin Venuses, the two sides of the same medal. I mean, Laura got married, so of course cannot be sacred and profane, because this way you immediately think that sacred, it's fine, profane, not that fine. Instead, it's the two sides of the same positive feelings. This Cupid here is shaking the water that wets one Venus and the other one. They're dressed or undressed exactly with the same colors, white and purple. And they're built so well. At the back of this Venus, of the earthly love Venus, how we should call it, there is a hills. To get married, it's uphill road. At the top you see a village, a fortress, a castle, maybe the place where Laura could go living after the wedding. A couple of rabbits, good fertility wish. At the back of divine God Venus, there is a much flatter, relaxing landscape, a small village. We get to see a bell tower. So different choices, but both of them are good, are positive. And it's so important, this painting, for all of the Venetian school, which traditionally we say it's based more on colors than on design and composition, as the Florentine and Roman would be. More love. This is a painting, 4 paintings, of course, 4 tondi, 4 circular paintings, commissioned directly to Francesco Albani by Scipione for a villa. Actually, originally was for a villa in Frascati, but then they were moved in the Borghese Pincian villa. They used to have, we have been finding all the archive records, also circular frames. So the idea that a circle still communicates of time going without interaction would have been even stronger than today, because the 4 tondi speak to us about the love of God and Goddess, and about the full season at once. Here we see Venus, who is getting ready. I mean, the maids are coiffing her. Cupid's playing. And it's also spring. The green, it's blooming. After that, We go in summer. Venus went to visit Vulcan, Hephaestus, who prepared arms and armors for all gods and goddesses, including arrows for Cupids. See here, they are exercising again the slide. It's not super good, but they are exercising with the arch, and they're supposed to shoot exactly here where there is a human heart. So in the Olympus, Cupids are exercising in what they will be doing on Earth in a short while, as soon as Venus, the mother, will allow them. After summer, we have the fall. Now, in fact, that's Adonis farewelling Venus. Mars, it's very happy because he knows that it's the last time, because Adonis, who is going hunting, will be eaten by the wild porks here. So even if Venus says, please stay with me today, you shouldn't be going hunting. But Adonis goes, no, I go hunting. That's basically the only thing I do in life, so I better go. Too bad. The end of the story, winter. Games are over. We don't see Venus. Sorry, I tend to go for the Latin name, but we know that Venus would be Aphrodite. We don't see Venus anymore. The final winner of the games, it's Diana the Chaste. But Venus has been the main character of the first three tondi. Well, yes, all the games related to Venus, love, sex, are more than welcome, are fine, but with judgment. Remember that the final winner must be Diana. So you see, it's Diana's maids who are taking away the archers and arrows from the sleepy Cupids, are switching off the fire of Vulcan. As I said, games are over for good. And that's somehow a reminder that Scipione wanted to have for himself. More love games with another painting owned by Scipione, painted by Domenichino, better Domenico Zampieri, nicknamed Domenichino because he must have been kind of short in size. This one has a lovely story. It was painted by Domenichino, who had a bottega, workshop, on the hill slope of Quirinal Hill. If you are familiar with Rome, it's where the Pope had his summer residence. It's where the President of the Italian Republic lives in our days. So in a very modern way, like modern patrons would do, Scipione I don't know exactly how, went to visit Domenichino in his atelier. Saw this painting, which was finished, but on behalf of a different patron, of the Cardinal Pietro Aldobrandini, to which Scipione was somehow related also. But Scipione saw it and thought that was beautiful, country games that you could be painting under the protection again of the goddess Diana. We see here she's connotated by this half moon. And so he said to Domenichino, I want it. Domenichino said, I can't sell it because I signed a contract, etc., with Cardinal Pietro Aldobrandini. No, but don't worry, Cardinal Borghese, I'll make you a second version, a replica. No, I want this one. No, I can't sell it. Let's make it short. Domenichino spent a night in jail. Remember that Scipione's uncle, it's the Pope, and the Pope, it's in 1614 Rome, it's the king. So the morning after waking up in jail, Domenichino wrote a letter to Scipione. Listen, Cardinal, please, I'm not even going to sell it. You can have it as a gift, but please, I want my freedom back. And this, of course, it's a terrible story on behalf of Scipione Borghese, but it makes us understand how desperate he was to obtain a certain work of art, how he would be doing everything. And here we are. I mean, we can really see there is this beautiful game of these two girls, this girl here really catching our eyes. And then we look back at her and we are brought through the arm, neck, shoulders, other arm of the other one in the real middle of the composition. It's a fantastic Baroque painting. This painting, just because I'm still sticking to the love iconographical theme, but actually this painting has nothing to do with Scipione Borghese. It's one of the very few paintings acquired after the 1600, was bought by Camillo Borghese. Camillo Borghese is the husband of Paulina Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister, and he bought it in Paris at an auction. It's the story of Danae, one of those love stories, loves of gods and goddesses that painters got from Ovid's Metamorphoses. And it's painted by Correggio. We are in 1530s. It's an important painting because it's really borderline between Renaissance, High Renaissance, and Mannerism. Here, it's now, forget a moment about Scipione, but just because I mentioned Camillo, we see his beautiful wife, Paulina Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister, who married, it wasn't really a love wedding. She was forced to marry Camillo Borghese by her brother, Napoleon, basically because Camillo was the most powerful prince in Rome and the richest aristocratic family in town. So she came, she was a widow, she was really desperate because she lost General Leclerc, the first husband who she loved. She had a young child, 60 years old, who died in Italy. Camillo basically moved in Piedmont because the living together didn't really quite work. We are in the late 1700s, early 1800s, but 1805, Paulina had the courage to ask to Antonio Canova to be portrayed like Venus. Venus the winner. She's holding an apple in her hands, the symbol of victory, of Paris judgment. And it's really quite something. This is a powerful image that recreates a bit the early 1800s atmosphere. Back to Scipione's collection. This is Raphael deposition. This one was brought by Napoleon without permission in Paris. So after the Vienna conference, it came back to Rome. And it went back to the Borghese Casino. Scipione was desperate to set up the best possible collection of paintings from Renaissance, so from 1400s to his days. He didn't want nothing from medieval art, already kind of judging those century, like dark centuries somehow. He had a precise idea of following somehow Giorgio Vasari's books from Renaissance to his days. And so he wanted Raphael. He also wanted Leonardo and Michelangelo, but impossible to find in the markets. Those artists. Raphael instead painted much more, but Scipione was picky. He wanted paintings by early Raphael in Florence before 1508, when he made it to Rome on behalf of Julius II. And this painting here was in Perugia, in a private chapel, the Baglione Chapel, in a church named St. Francis, again in Perugia. So Scipione basically asked, we are exactly 100 years after, the painting it's signed and dated 1507. So we are in 1607. Scipione asked the heirs of the Baglione family if he could purchase his painting. And they said no, we are sorry, because it was commissioned by our great-great-great-grandmother, Atlanta Baglione, to remember her son, Griffonetto, who had died during some local wars. And it's really in the back, this tower belongs still to our family, so no. Okay, Scipione said, too bad. One morning, they woke up and they saw that at the place of this beautiful painting by Raphael, there was a copy by a contemporary painter. Today, we could imagine, I don't know, a picture, a photo at the place of painting. So they immediately understood that something wasn't working well. And they also understood that that's because Scipione had someone stealing the painting for him. So they said, listen, Cardinal nephew, it's illegal, it's inappropriate, give it back. It's unfair. And lots of people from Perugia clanned around the Baglione family, but nothing to do. Scipione, it's the nephew of the Pope. And the Pope said, people of Perugia was part of the church state, so ruled by Paul V. He said, if you stop it now, good for you. Let's all live in peace and harmony. If you don't stop it now, I'm going to increase the tax on grain, on wheat. So you know how much bread, pizza, and pasta we have in Italian, in the Italian food today. Imagine in 1600. Basically, he threatened the Perugia people of bringing them to starve or whatever. Impossible. More paintings by Raphael, portrait of a young lady with a unicorn, which was painted by Raphael in Florence at the same time that Leonardo painted Mona Lisa. And you see there are some similarities. This painting, it's also quite interesting because it's the first painting we know in history, was totally covered up, looked like Saint Catherine of Alexandria, no more mythological animal, the unicorn, a spike wheel for Catherine martyrdom. And the director of the gallery in 1900s really wasn't convinced, working between the archive records, the inventories of the collection, where the portrait by Raphael go. Wasn't sold by the Borghese, so it must be here. So he had the most interesting and amazing idea we could think of. He carried on the painting on a cab, went to a friend of him, a doctor, a radiologist, and had X-rays made to the painting. And they understood that you could see between two layers. For us, 110, 112 years after, it's nearly obvious. Before any kind of restoration, we do this kind of diagnostical process. But to be thinking of it when the X-ray machines were barely working on human body, that they could be working also on paintings, was really quite something. Another important painting is Antonello da Messina. We are back to Venice in the late 1400s, this portrait of a gentleman. Antonello is quoted by Vasari as the one who brought in the Italian peninsula oil painting. We know that it's not correct, not totally correct, but per sure Antonello used it, so it's really quite important. After him, most Italian painters abandoned the use of tempera as a media and went for oil. Finally, getting to Scipione's patronage, direct patronage, he discovers Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who was hanging out next to his father, Pietro Bernini, a Tuscan sculptor who had moved to Naples, married a Napolitan woman, but then moved to Rome 1608 because he heard about the works carried by Scipione Borghese, and he thought, if I move in Rome, I'll get employed. And in fact, that happened. Pietro worked at the Borghese, at some of the Borghese fountains in the garden. Young Gian Lorenzo was just hanging next to his father. Scipione, while checking his domain, noticed a young boy, 9, 10 years old, and launched him, we could say, honestly. And he commissioned him lots of sculptures. This, in chronological order, it's the first one of the 4 Borghese group, Aeneas carrying father and escaping from Troy, from burning Troy, also with his son, Ascanius and Anchises. We are in 1618, so Gian Lorenzo, it's 20 years old, exactly that year. Maybe he was also helped by his father. Scholars don't totally agree, but immediately after, for the David, he's a total independent master. We all may compare it to Michelangelo's David, and we could guess the differences easily, really spell out the differences. Renaissance, Baroque. Here it's a hero in action, in motion. We nearly want to, even from the slide, move back because the stone could be hitting us. Apollo and Daphne, this incredible sculpture, another story from Ovid Metamorphosis, all about love, temporary love. As always, I'm close to be running out of time, and I do not want to. So I'm not going to go. I'm not for the story, but just have a look to this. The ceiling painted, realized in 1780 by Pietro Angeletti, again, a name we may forget. But here, same story. 1620, 1790s, Baroque, neoclassical. This is really important because first we know that in most of the rooms there was a decoration team, one work of art, usually a statue, an ancient Roman statue. So in most rooms, this link, it's lost between the work of art and the neoclassical decoration, because the ancient Roman statues are in the Louvre Museum, Paris, but not in this room, since always the most important statue here was Bernini's Apollo and Daphne. So according to this story, same iconography on the ceiling, but here, without knowing the story, which I didn't tell you, we can immediately see that something wrong is going on. This beautiful man is catching this beautiful girl, but leaves, roofs, maybe he will be a little disappointed. He won't have a beautiful girl, but just a tree. Here, it looks like they're enjoying a picnic in the country. That's not this drama, this urgent of narrating a story that we have here in Renaissance. And finally, the rape of Persephone's rape by Pluto, the statue I have mentioned at the beginning of my talk, that was given to Ludovico Ludovisi, and now it's in one of the two entrance halls. The very last minutes of my talk are destined to Caravaggio, because Scipione loved Caravaggio, and Caravaggio's life, it's really intertwined with Scipione patronage somehow. But these two paintings, which it's young Caravaggio, Caravaggio just in Rome, 1592-93, were in the collection of a painter, the Cavaliere d'Arpino, that employed Caravaggio in his very first, using a not correct term, bohemian beginnings in Rome. We are in 1707, so after the murder, which would have been in 1706. So impossible to commission a painting to Caravaggio who is on the run. So Scipione, the Pope, will have confiscated the whole collection of the Cardinal, of the Cavaliere d'Arpino, taking a collection of weapons as an excuse. The Cavaliere d'Arpino pays a fine, he gets back his collection, but without these two amazing paintings, Boy with a Fruit Basket and Sic Bacchus, a self-portrait of Caravaggio, Sic Bacchus, from his collection. Out of time, so I just show you the very last paintings. This was painted for St. Peter's Basilica, the Snake Virgin, the Palafrenieri Madonna. And again, because of a scandal maneuvered by Scipione Borghese, lots of people, VIPs, who went in St. Peter and said, come on, the Virgin dressed in red with her chest out, Saint Anne, the Virgin Mother, so old, inappropriate for the most important church of the Catholic Christian world. In short, was bought by the Cardinal's nephew collection for half of the money that it had been promised to Caravaggio. Two paintings realized on the run, Saint Jerome and Saint John the Baptist, which Caravaggio had on the boat, just like his very last painting, David with the hand of Goliath, signed here on the sword. I mean, it's actually not really signed. There are some letters. It says, Inoc humilitas, in this my humiliation, because in the head of Goliath, the negative hero, poor, false, with no intelligence, Caravaggio made a self-portrait. This painting, like the last two we saw, was destined to, we imagine, the Cardinal Scipione Borghese, who had convinced his uncle to forgive Caravaggio for the murder and inviting back to Rome. But that wasn't possible because Caravaggio died soon after he got off from the boat who brought him back from his, let's say, just journey. So I hope that was interesting. I mean, I had the impression I have been running, but I did point out what I wanted. Thank you so much for your attention. And Nancy, I'm ready for questions now.
Well, Daria, first of all, thank you so much. This was an extraordinary introduction to all of us, even those of us who have spent quite a lot of time in the past at the Villa Borghese, to the collection and to the development of the collection. And I don't see anything in the chat now, so I will invite people to add to the chat but I'm wondering if I might start with a question that occurred to me throughout as you were speaking. And that is, you alluded to the Roman sculptures that are in the Louvre, which I think many of us have seen. And I'm wondering if when the Villa Borghese did this exhibition, which brought back many of those sculptures to Rome, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, how they were integrated into the collection, because this question that you raised at the end, which was that the 1780 decoration and reinstallation of the collection was based upon the themes of many of those classical sculptures, would have finally, you would have finally been able to bring all of that together again. And
in fact,
I didn't see the show, and I think many of us might not have seen it because it was there temporarily. I wonder if you could say a little bit about that experience.
Show, and it was fantastic. The former director Anna Goliva succeeded into obtaining all of those pieces, including the famous hermaphrodite, ancient Roman restored by Bernini. So she succeeded into having them from the Louvre for a couple of months, which it's really quite something. And the show was great, Borghese l'Antico. How did they integrate beautifully? Really, it couldn't work better. But what is also interesting, it's I mean, when some of those pieces, most of the classical art pieces were brought in France by Napoleon, what the Borghese did, not to lose the decoration, I mean, they basically looked in the basement if they had some pieces to replace them. Soon after, the Borghese family, the Borghese prince had been sponsoring archaeological excavation by Visconti, by an Italian archaeologist. And therefore, I mean, you just really had to focus on the fact that the quality of the object was more beautiful when the Louvre pieces were in Rome. But they did quite a good job, I would say, in replacing them when they left, with more or less the same theme, or at least placed in the same spots. So, under the museographic point of view, it works well, even today. I mean, you know, the collection, and then when you look at it, you don't really feel then something is missing, do you?
No, I didn't, but I felt bad that I never experienced the return of those sculptures.
No, that was nice.
That would have a different impression. And I'm glad, thank you for commenting on that.
You're welcome.
We have another question here from Stephanie Leone, our department chair. First of all, she says it was a wonderful lecture, with which we all agree, of course. She was wondering if you could explain Scipione's wildly diverse artistic taste. Was there anything he didn't like? Well, besides medieval art.
Medieval art, know that, come on.
And she's asking what you think his criteria were.
I've been thinking, because really, I mean, now if you think at the paintings, he liked Caravaggio's realism and the opposite current of Annibale, Francesco Albani, Domenichino, which is closer to a baroque Renaissance in a way. So he liked the two sides of early 1600s visual arts, which, I mean, the other families went for one or the other one. Instead, he strongly enjoyed both of them. I think simply because he had such a huge passion for life, for beauty, such a highly developed aesthetic taste that whatever pleased his eyes, he wanted it. So yes, he had a wide interest, now we said. But basically, I would say that the quality of his collection, it's really over the top. The Pope nephew had a good position from where he could realize it. But I think he really was a bit special in that. Whatever, but conditio sine qua non, I must like it. Now we know that everything is relative, but at that time, I think he would say just, it must be beautiful somehow. It must be high quality, I would say.
Well, if there are no further questions here in the chat, I'll just wait about a minute. If there are no further questions, I think it remains for us to thank you for a wonderful, wonderful experience, and to wish you a very beautiful day in Apulia, where the weather is much better than here.
Okay, so, thank you so much to all of you, and I really hope at some point we'll be able to see each other together again. I mean, between Boston and Rome in